Hello guys, I would like to describe some trend of the revolution of common sense by Donald Trump. This is an English version and I can give you the link to the Russian one. So please enjoy it and send your messages to me and resend this text
Revolution
to
of Common
others.
Sense. Fourth issue. Trump 47 is pushing forward the traditions of U.S. historic isolationism. This means rejection of the outdated paradigm of messianism of U.S. Dems with their wars at the expense of the Federal State Treasury. There are many examples of Trump's criticism about it. One of them deals with President Carter selling the Panama Canal for $1 in 1979, and the other one is the refusal to provide military assistance to Zelensky on February 28th of this year. By the logic of his revolution of common sense, Trump 47 is also going to split further with EU NATO. They, on the contrary, try to give money and weapons to Ukraine instead of supporting US peace initiatives. In short, Trump's proposal to demilitarize the United States and other countries of the world with their common and simultaneous reducing all military budgets by 2 times is at the heart of the revolution of common sense. This is its essence. Fewer wars, less taxes on their waging and higher well-being of peoples. Trump refused to finance Ukraine's previous war, according to Biden's generals with their stupid guidelines, with embezzlement by the Dems from the Federal State Treasury, and suspended the remilitarization of the EU NATO to save Private Zelensky. It is a paraphrasing the title of the Saving Private Ryan movie of 1998. Up to now, Zelensky has been demanding that this kind of his war for the global democracy is to be continued on the way towards peace, which is contrary to the essence of the revolution of common sense. As for the Russian Federation and Ukraine, the peaceful fruits of that revolution will make it possible to end the latent civil war of petrocracy against digital oligarchs that is underway since the 1970s. The overdue rearmament of many countries from the military strategies in favor of kinetic warfare to an inexpensive and computerized one began evident with the 2022 special military operation in Ukraine. That is why since then, and it is semi-hidden in the so-called Union States of the Russian Federation and Belarus, that the civil war between petrocracy and digital autocracy in power has escalated for preventing the influence of Trump's revolution of common sense. Though the new turn of President Lukashenko is aimed at cooperation between previous competitors in Trump's way, it means a ban by petrocrats on any digital business without bribes. For example, the EU demanded $17 billion from Apple for nothing as a bribe. Trump's revolution is against fines, bribes for the sake of any partocracy and bureaucracy, as Trump pointed out on March 13th. Be in the form of military training in Ukraine and the Russian Federation with Belarus young people and the entire population could be used for sophisticated wars with NATO and repelling attacks from mystical and alleged claims of President Trump and China with their demands to save the so-called bureaucratic sovereignty of other autocrats. See within the Russian-Belarusian Union State, there is a not-so-latent civil war between business structures with their exchanges of fires in the warehouses of petrocrats and digital trade store markets and stores as results by the armed forces of Ukraine's acts. Trump reconciled his petrocracy and digital barons and tycoons, preventing a civil war in the United States. His experience is useful to us. 1. Trump proposes to copy more and more new treaties in the interests of his petrocracy, drill baby drill, and digital community. Today the White House people call it a bill baby bill practice. That is why the Russian petrocrats of Gazprom are already repairing Nord Stream 2 for Ukraine and the UE. Negotiations are also underway to replace the traditional forces of the SMO in Donbass with paramilitaristic PMCs from countries outside Europe or in the United States. It should bring guarantees of sharing high profits on digital exchanges, although this is impossible even under elementary competition. Be an agreement for the Marshall Plan 2 to be implemented in Ukraine without losses from the U.S. Federal State Treasury. See Trump, when mining lithium in his own Arkansas, is ready to guarantee high profits against dumping by other partners' competitors for lithium. His PMC, and not the rapid development forces of the British, German, Lithuanian, Estonian and French, will try to prevent the disruption of lithium supplies by terrorist attacks there in the to-be peaceful Donbass. 2. The unfreezing of the arrested $300 billion of the Russian Federation in the EU, the USA, Great Britain, offshore companies of the British Commonwealth for the Special Military Operation, SMO, could have already gone to restructure the institutions of power and the economy of Ukraine. But that plan of Trump 47 was thwarted on February 28 by Zelensky. He did this in the expectation of strengthening his personal power in a permanent war without elections. To this end, he clearly colluded with Prime Minister Starmer, President Macron and the newly formed government in Germany. The essence of this conspiracy, if any, is to start rearmament of the armed forces of Ukraine, the security service of Ukraine and the military-industrial complex of Ukraine together, and not as it was under Biden, instead of the EU NATO, and then for the higher price of 800 billion euros. It means exclusion of $500 billion from the US Federal State Treasury. Well done, Mr. President Trump. New superspending for Zelensky will, in my opinion, be withdrawn from European banks. The seizure is already underway under waves of anti-Semitism as results of the well-known events in Gaza in 2023. Save money on Zelensky's support is to finance severe cadre changes in the U.S. law enforcement, military and legal sectors. The essence of the latest decrees by Trump is to identify anti-Semitism with anti-Americanism and terrorism in order to quickly destroy the fixed enemy in, outside the United States. Trump said this on March 14 at the Department of Justice. 3. There is a purely technical cyber modernization based on ITAI from the multi-million army of Elon Musk fans. As soon as it is legally formalized in the United States, disagreements on Private Zelensky as a defender of democracy in Europe or the whole world will be immediately eliminated. 4. After the last Munich Security Conference, the split in the understanding of the defense of democracy between Vice President Vance and the EU NATO protection without the United States mafioso Zelensky has widened. 5. After November 5th, disagreements over Ukraine within the clans of politicians and the masses and outside the USA, EU NATO became insurmountable. Let's consider the options for overcoming them with soft power, i.e. without hostilities in Ukraine. After the removal of Prime Minister Starmer from power in the UK in May at local elections or earlier by King Charles himself. On March 1-2, Starmer dared by himself to save Private Zelensky with money from the hands of the king himself. It was a sum of £26 billions without discussions in the parliament. In fact, Starmer did it by his own free will, though there are suspicions of some instructions from the PRC, where Starmer has been more frequently since June than in the British Commonwealth, not to mention the EU NATO and his shameful failures at meetings with Trump. In short, Starmer deprived King Charles of the legal right to recognize or reject the decisions of Parliament. Today, Starmer, not the king, has become a symbol of supreme power, be in the EU NATO. For sure, when saving Private Zelensky, it will be necessary to compensate for property losses and moral damage from helping Ukraine with a certain Marshall Plan too. These donations are real from Qatar's gas revenues to the EU, as well as to Turks, Arabs and Jews of Israel with Palestinians. But it all depends on their investments in the security of those supplies according to the proverb, you reap what you sow. 6. Trump hangs the Kremlin and the EU NATO on concerns about European security without agreement with Putin, even over the phone talks. Trump, in fact, is handing over to the Kremlin, Brussels and London, bearing in mind Starmer's ties with the PRC, an Ukrainian suitcase without the nuclear handle, heavy to carry its rapidity. 7. Trump's cryptocurrency is displacing the corrupt influence of the oligarchy in and out of Europe on their media and corrupt resources with hired anti-Trumpists. 8. The rapid, in 2 months, dismissal of anti-Trumpists from 2.2 million federal state clerks by Elon Musk supporters in the new DOGE with ITAI tools is reminiscent of the lines from Kipling's poem, "Whatever happens, we have got the Maxim gun, and they have not." 9. The lie about Trump's unpredictability is the result of A. The lack of commanding American English by his critics. They take ready-made fake news from corrupted mass media gurus. B. The activities of 7 mass media incubators of fake news with the money of Dems taken from the U.S. Federal State Treasury until their liquidation by Trump in March. I mean the Voice of America, Radio Liberty, etc. 10. A new course has been taken to cleanse anti-Trumpists in society and the armed forces. It will be completed by the 250th anniversary of the United States in 2026. 11. One method of purge of anti-Trumpists is in Trump's decrees on them as harmful, gender garbage in sports, education, the armed forces, transportation, education, etc. 12. The neutralization of the black-brown electorate of the U.S. Democrats is taking place with A. The appointment of non-white leaders of the FBI and intelligence, Gabbard and Patel, both with genetic roots from India, against the racial religious subversives of the Common Sense Revolution. B. On March 16th, Tulsi Gabbard announced in India the strengthening of intelligence sharing mechanisms between the United States and the countries of the Indo-Pacific region to combat terrorism and transnational crimes. This step of the United States from previous ties with the EU NATO leaves Europeans, along with the Russian Federation in the Ukrainian suitcase without a nuclear handle in Zelensky's hands, if any. So, Trump is against the ETHNO religious civil war and for saving U.S. funds on the Zelensky's phenomenon of saving democracy with money and weapons from outsiders. Zelensky was declared a mafioso along with his European allies. Without the propaganda of the Voice of America and Radio Liberty, they are no longer freedom fighters for democracy and the economy of the West. On November 5th, 2024, Trump changed his rhetoric against the Russian Federation and China, which was overlooked by the Kremlin advisors who call themselves Germanists or experts in anti-American Europe. Trump replaced the sharp ideological confrontation of the U.S. demos allegedly against Putin in Ukraine. The point is that the Dems were taking the lion's share of the Ukrainian lend-lease to fight Trump, attributing to him friendship with Putin. And Trump wisely has changed the record with an ideologically neutral appeal to fight against terrorism and transnational crimes and only in the Western Hemisphere. The new Monroe II Doctrine is against the previous counterproductive spendings on Europe. The doctrine stands for gigantic investments in the United States from all over the world, not excluding the Russian Federation. However, Russian business does not yet have the desire, experts and cadres to rush to the USA and enjoy investment benefits of Trump. Moreover, on March 18th, at the Congress of the Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs, Putin in a harsh and playful form offered to invest in the Russian Federation, virtually free of charge, for the sake of the fatherland. And only through the RSPP filter under the KGB, FSB, etc. control for benefits of new friend of the Kremlin. And the Kremlin, through its own and Chinese ITAI tools, will calculate the profits from the return of factories of US and European companies for repaying by then triple the price, after their loss, per ruble S1 since 2022. The Russian, prosperous, domestic market with its shadow basis in 70–80%, does not look like an El Dorado for Trump loyalists in the Donbass or within the Russian Federation and the CIS. This is against the essence of the revolution of common sense with its humane goal setting for all, and not for the parties and clans in power. Vladimir Lukov, Trends of the Revolution.
Well, you've got what you want. So please send your remarks and present this material to others, and we shall overcome. We shall overcome for the sake of the revolution of common sense by Donald J. Trump. Bye-bye.